never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger was arrested this morning at a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expecting to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. It's been a couple of days. It's good to see everybody. I hope everybody has been safe throughout this weekend. For those Steeler fans, we got to see Aaron Rodgers take the field today on OT or for mini camp, so that was exciting. But for everybody else, I hope you had a safe time. I want to say welcome to the mods. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you to our subscribers, our members, and everybody in between. Guys, don't forget, if you want to get involved in the conversation, don't be afraid to hit the join button, become a member. We have a Discord link for members. I'll be putting it on after the show. That way you can be part of our conversation and be part of the group. Today, I got a pretty good show for you guys. I have an excellent guest. Let's bring her on, Angenette Levy from Law and Crime Network. How's it going, Angenette?
Doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'm doing well. It's trying to stay cool. I'm out here in Texas, so it's been kind of warm outside. I'll be honest with you. It's it's only going to get warmer too. So I'm in for a lot.
Yeah, where I live, it gets pretty humid and muggy in the summers, but I actually work with a young woman from Texas, and she's been telling me how muggy and gross it is there already, and it's just the beginning of June. So I think you're in for a really humid and muggy summer there. So yeah, we've been lucky here in Ohio. Like we at least, it's been a little chilly. It was a little muggy last week, but that just means we're going to suffer later in the summer.
Oh yeah. No, out here it's gotten worse, and I was listening in. I was tuning into the Karen Reed case, and the other day they took a day off because it was like 90 degrees, and I was like, wow, that was like February for us.
Right. That's that's so funny. Like when I hear that reminds me of when I was in high school, and the rival high school, they didn't have air conditioning. And so they would sometimes get the hot days off. And I was always like, man, that's just not, that's not right. Like we had air conditioning in ours. So that's actually really funny that they were off because it was hot out. That's hysterical.
Yeah. I was like, geez. And I mean, it is what it is. I get it. I think up there in the Northeast, their ACs and their air conditions maybe aren't up to what we have down here in Texas. We don't play around. We need to make sure you stay cool. So, but enough of that. Bryan Kohberger case. I've been tuning into your channel, You've been covering the case. For those that don't know, you're on Law and Crime Network. Is that correct?
Yes. I work at Law and Crime, but then I have my own little YouTube channel. So,
And your own little YouTube channel. What is it about?
I just kind of pop on there and talk about whatever. I mean, mostly it's been the Kohberger case. I've been trying to do some other cases as well, but it seems like a lot of people are interested in the Kohberger case, even though it seems like, we've learned everything we're going to learn until the trial, barring another big evidence leak, or I guess there's a book coming out in July. Maybe we'll learn some new stuff there. But people are still interested. They're craving information. They want to know, I think what happened, exactly what happened, and what's going to happen with this case, how the evidence is going to be presented and stuff like that. So I've been mostly talking about Kohberger, but I've been trying to talk about some other things too. I've been trying to cover Sean Combs. That hasn't really been taking off as much on my channel. I did cover a little bit of Karen Reed on my channel. Interesting how you cover Karen Reed and you really hear about it. People are very opinionated about that case. I'm sure you've felt that too.
Yes.
But I don't think that case is as difficult as people make it out to be. So it'll be interesting to see what the jury does with that case.
I agree with you 100%. I haven't seen your take on Karen Reed's case, but I think it's pretty obvious. To me, it seems like there's more evidence in that case than in this case with Bryan Kohberger. Although I think a lot of people have struggled to see that. But going to Kohberger, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I don't really go into my opinions about her and I think it's amazing to me, that case and what's gone on with it. The documentary was really a twist. The ID documentary. I don't know if you watched it.
I did. I've seen the documentaries. I've seen her interviews. I've gotten well versed in that case since the second trial started. I didn't watch any of maybe about 10% of the first trial. And I really didn't want to touch it with like a 10-foot pole, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
With like a lot of people saying that, they thought she was innocent for whatever reason. And I think there was good reason for people to be speculative, in the first trial. There was a lot of question marks, but, looking at it from just this point of view, it seems pretty obvious to me. But yeah, it'll be interesting what the jury does in that case. Unlike that case in the Bryan Kohberger case, there's still their sides. I think Bryan Kohberger has a following. It's a large following. It's maybe not as large as the Free Karen Reed group, but it is a large group, the Kohbergers. Do you get a lot of pushback on your channel from those that support Bryan Kohberger when you talk about him?
I wouldn't say that I get pushback. I don't think I do. I get people who chime in, but I also make it really clear on my channel. I don't care what the case is. Everybody's welcome on my channel as long as they're respectful to one another. They can come in and voice their viewpoints, give me their commentary, their thoughts. I'm always willing to listen and look at what people have to say. But if they come in and start being nasty to to each other and causing trouble, I don't want to hear it. You just can't act like that. But people tell me, oh, you need to go check out this person. You need to go check out that person. And I've kind of done that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go look at that person and see what they're saying. And, I'm super busy, like at work and stuff. So I don't have a lot of time to like watch every single person's YouTube videos on stuff. But, I just know there's a lot out there with the Bryan Kohberger case. I've looked into a lot of it. I've read the books, like I read the Howard Bloom book. I saw what he wrote about it and some of the other theories about the case and things like that have been entertained by the defense. So I'm just waiting to see the presentation of the evidence at the trial, because that's what matters. All we've seen right now is what's written on court documents. So what will matter is how it all unfolds in court. And right now I'm waiting to see if it actually happens in August, because, the state's opposition to the continuance filed, the request for the continuance, it hit the docket today. So the state's like saying, hey, it's time to go now. Let's do this. So it'll be, and Hippler has kind of been pretty firm. I feel like he softened up toward the defense a little bit after the Dateline thing. I mean, he's mad. He's furious. So we'll see what happens next week during the hearing.
I will say that there is a little bit difference in Hippler. He does seem pretty upset about the entire situation, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Breaking it down, though, I think that, like, for instance, one of his issues was suspect vehicle 1. I know that video exists. I know that video is in other hands. But
other than law enforcement?
Correct. And a lot of the reasons I know that it's out there is because, well, let me put it this way. I strongly suspect Dateline was out there very early when this thing went down. I think NBC sent some people out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got it, from the source. The Linda Lane footage got leaked out from the source. Now, I don't think the same reasoning behind it was there. Like, for instance, the Linda Lane footage, I had Steve Goncalves on the channel, and he mentioned that it was a money grab. I know that it was bought and purchased for. I don't think that's necessarily the same case with the footage from 11/12, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dateline made contact. And this is just my speculation. I don't know that Dateline made contact with them or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dateline made contact with them early on before the non-dissemination order, and maybe have gotten a copy of that then. When it comes to a lot of the things that Dateline put out there, I think we knew a lot about many of those things. Like, we knew he was in the area 23 times. We knew that he turned off his phone. We knew that he had.
That was all in court documents.
That was all
hearings. Yeah.
Correct. The only things that we didn't know were some of these selfies, which I don't necessarily believe you can say, all right, here's a picture of him in a hoodie, that means he's a murderer. There's some searches, some of his musical interests, and we got to hear the audio from the 1112 King Road residents from 50 foot away, but that audio was described in the PCA. So to me, yes, it's unfortunate. There are some new things that may have come out, some things that maybe perhaps shed a little bit of light. We know for a fact now that those 23 times, like 12 of them happened before August, and then the other 13 happened between September and November, leading about 7 days up until the day before of the incident, 7 days before the days of the incident. We knew most of that. So I think optically, did it look convincing? I think so. What did you think about the way they put it together?
I could have probably, I think they have probably had a hard time finding people to talk, first of all. I probably could have done without the lady who was Maddie's boss at the store. I thought some of that was a little bit like, but I'm sure, like, a lot of the family members this close to trial are not going to want to do a lot of interviews. They're probably stepping back a little bit. Especially in Maddie's mom. I've only seen her in one interview, and that was on the Today Show, talking about the Maddie May Foundation. And so that's the only interview I've ever seen Maddie's mother do. I think that's the only interview she's done. So I was surprised to not see her in the Dateline. But I can understand why. I mean, it's a show focused on her daughter's murder. So they probably had a hard time getting people, close family members to talk, which I totally understand. The Linda Lane video, I may beg to differ with you on that point. And I say this only, or not Linda Lane, I apologize. The 1112 video, I beg to differ with you on that point, only because I feel like if they had that early on, the gag order was in place almost immediately after his arrest. They agreed on that very early on in January of 2022. I remember because as the media, we fought it. Like, we went to court and said, you guys got to, we went to judge said, you got to loosen this thing up. I had to do a declaration saying this is ridiculous. Nobody will answer my questions about anything. So I wrote a declaration, the lawyers helped me craft it, I've contacted everybody and nobody will answer my questions about anything. And there are ways to have a non-dissemination order without just being like, I can't even like answer your question about this to clarify something. So I'm not sure it's possible they got that early on, but I'm not sure I believe that. There were students living there. Of course, the students may not have had possession of that video. The homeowner, the landlord probably had possession of that video. So maybe they got it from that person. I don't know. But a lot of this seems like stuff that would have been maybe in the hands of law enforcement. So
I'll say this though. I was going to air it and I didn't get it from law enforcement.
yeah. Well, so
Neither
somebody,
of the 911 call either.
somebody then gave it to somebody then. So, that's interesting that you have it and it was aired on Dateline and you still haven't aired it.
I made promises I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And then the non-dissemination. Well, then Hitler came down on the Dateline, and one of the reasons was because specifically that video, and so I decided that it was best not to air that, to side on the air of caution.
So then somebody who's not law enforcement that has possession of that video, and so maybe that's fine, whatever. But yeah, I mean, that would be the clearest images those would be the clearest images we would see of that footage. So of his car, of the car, I shouldn't say his car because that's a fact in dispute, but of the white car, suspect vehicle 1. So I don't know.
Yeah, I had the 911 call too.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had the 911 call also for about 7 days or so before I aired it, and also the same thing, out of respect and also out of the people that I know as well. I don't want to disrespect anything that they, when they were comfortable with it going out, they were comfortable. And then it was twofold. It was when they were comfortable, and then it was also when the family members of the victims that I'm aware of, that I talked to, because I don't talk to all of them, but the ones that I talked to, basically what I said to them was, I'm not going to air it until it airs out. And the reason being was because I don't want to be the one to put that out there. It was these young ladies who were panicking, scared.
Right.
They were trying to figure out everything in that time. And, I got explaining to a family member, I was like, once it's out, there's nothing I can do about that. It's going to be out there. So once it's out, I'll drop it. And that's what I did. I waited. And the exact moment that it was, that I was told it was okay to do so, that's when I did it. And same thing with that video or anything else that I have, because I have a few things, and I wouldn't ever put any of those things out without first somebody saying, yeah, it's okay. And I also don't want to violate any gag order. Like, I've seen certain parts of the crime scene, not the actual crime scene, but parts of it. And so,
like crime scene photos? No,
nothing from law enforcement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I've not gotten anything from law enforcement in that direction. But I've worked with some things, and so to me, I know that there are some things out. Before Bryan Kohberger got arrested, I was told multiple times that Dylan saw somebody in the house. I didn't believe it, to be honest with you. I didn't believe it. I was like, how is somebody going to see somebody in the house and not call 911? You know what I'm saying? That was my first thought. So I didn't put it out there. And then when it came out, me and the guys were like dumbfounded. We're like, wow, I guess they got one right. I guess somebody did see somebody in the house. How do you think that's going to play out in court with Ann Taylor? Do you think she's going to target Dylan and Bethany for not calling 911 for 8 hours? Or do you think that's something you have to handle with like kid gloves due to the fact that these are victims too? We've heard the 911 call. I'm fairly positive they're going to be emotional on the stand.
Yeah.
How hard can she go at them?
Well, I don't know if it'll be Ann Taylor. It could be the other Alyssa Masseth, since she's the one that did the motion on all of that stuff. So I don't know which one of them will actually question the roommates, especially DM. But I've been kind of saying for a while that I think they have to be very careful with these young women, because they're going to be, I mean, you're going to look at them as a defense attorney as somebody that you can possibly go after and cast some doubt in the case with, like, well, you didn't, what were you doing? You're sitting there, you're on Instagram, you're on Yik Yak and whatever else, whatever other apps you're on, and you're doing all this stuff, and yet you're not calling 911. You're not going upstairs to check on anybody. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. But at the same time, I think it's like they're going to walk into court, and depending on who's on that jury, these could just look like, some time has passed, but young girls, I mean, I think we all have questions about, my God, like, really? Like, you saw a weird dude in your house and you were scared to death, but you didn't call 911. Like, that it doesn't, to all of us, it doesn't make sense. But
Right.
we're also not 19-year-old girls who are drunk, and you're scared to death, and you're telling your roommate that, and you're running down the steps to go hang out with her. To us, we're much older. At least I feel much older than that. I don't know about you. I won't ask you your age.
I'm over
But
19.
it just doesn't compute for us, right? And it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but I think they have to be kind of careful. And it all depends on how they present. I mean, I hear BF's voice on that call, and I'm like, oh my God. She's like, something's happened in our house. And she just sounds like she sounds like a girl.
That's
So
right.
I'm just thinking to myself, I feel like they kind of have to be delicate about it. You can be maybe not delicate, but you can be like aggressive without being like totally rude about it. You can be more surgical about it if you're looking to, get something out of them, which we'll see what they're going to try to get out of them at trial.
Yeah. Well, I know that there was a speculation back in the day. What it is that Bethany saw, because the defense wanted to question her. It seems like to me, if I had to take a guess, I think they were trying to see if she heard the person go down to the first floor. Now, the reason behind that is we found out later that there's some DNA on the handrail on the first floor to second floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no evidence at this point that puts the intruder going down to the first floor. Now, if they were to talk to Bethany and she say, oh, I may have heard something, anything at all, then they could have tried to tie in that blood or that unknown DNA to the murderer and the intruder and try to say it's one and the same. And it doesn't sound like that ended up being the case from what I understand. And so, I know there was some rumors that maybe she saw somebody without clothes outside. I think that was proven to be false when the documents said that Dylan is the only person alive to have seen the intruder.
Right.
So that completely debunks, her seeing anybody without clothes. But I think that's what they were going for, was that DNA. Do you think that DNA is going to be troublesome for the prosecution come trial time?
It really just depends. I don't know for certain, because we haven't heard a precise explanation as to why it wasn't pursued. We heard in that one sealed hearing, Payne said, like, well, they had to take, the unknown DNA out of the system, out of CODIS, to put the other stuff in. I thought in August of 2023 that Bill Thompson had said something in court about they couldn't test it or they couldn't do something.
Mm-hmm.
Ann Taylor said in court recently something to the effect of, we just now recently got an explanation about why they didn't pursue that or didn't do testing on it. So I think it's just going to depend. I mean, the most compelling piece of DNA evidence in that house, as far as I know, as far as you know, is, I've got it right here. It's the DNA on this. This is my sheath. I've got, my little sheath that I use to talk about this. It's not little either. It's huge. It's very disturbing, actually. That's the most compelling piece of DNA evidence. I mean, it's a knife sheath next to one of the victims' bodies, and it's Bryan Kohberger's DNA. So that to me is, as close to a smoking gun as you can get. Now, what's their theory on that? I don't know. She's kind of acted like, how did it get there? She said that in court a couple of times. So are they going full OJ here? I don't know. That kind of makes me think possibly. So it's possible it could be problematic, but I need to know a little bit more about it. The stuff on the glove outside, I don't know if I'm that interested in that. The stuff on the handrail just depends. She said it was a spot and she didn't make it sound like it was very big.
Yeah.
So I don't know. DM said she saw a guy go toward the kitchen, so we don't know. We haven't heard anything about anybody going down the stairs or anything like that.
Exactly. There's been nothing that says anything about him going down the stairs. The other thing too is, I mean, if you look at the pictures from outside of the house, from the exterior that are looking into the house through the windows, you see the reminiscence of a beer pong table, people playing beer pong. There's cups, there's red Solo cups, there's a table, there's beer cans, there's food, there's drinks, there's everything all over the place and everywhere else in between. The night before this incident occurred, there was a huge party at that house. Those were the images that Dylan was editing and things like that there throughout the night were from that party the night before. It has been, I guess, speculated that about somewhere around 150 people may have went into that building and came out of that building during that time. Now, because of the images of the party that was left behind, that tells me that they didn't clean up very well, at least for that moment. Right now, neighbors in the area reported that it was awfully quiet in that neighborhood that night. So there wasn't a party. I know that people are going to say, well, maybe there was a party there while they were gone. No, there was people that were partying it. I mean, there was people that were neighbors that were living in the area saying it was awfully quiet that night. So there was no party or anything like that. So, as if you're law enforcement, you're going into this saying, all right, it was about 150 people here. This place hasn't been cleaned up. It's on the first floor, right next to the entrance to the doorway where everybody would have walked in to come into the house. How much weight do you put on that piece of evidence versus something that the killer brought in that wasn't there during this 150 people party the night before? So I think you look at that evidence on the knife sheath and you put it above all the other DNA in the house, in my opinion.
Well, we don't even know how old this piece of DNA is, this spot that she's talking about. I mean, we're talking about a spot, like a spot could be like small, and they made it sound small in court. I mean, it's a spot. So, I mean, it could mean very little. Like let's say I cut, this is a stabbing case. Okay. This is a horrific stabbing case. We have not, that they swabbed. They had to have swabbed all over that crime scene and looked for DNA mixtures and all kinds of things. This is what they do when they process crime scenes. And I'm sure we'll hear about that at the trial. If, stabbings are horrific. So, and if you're doing a stabbing, I mean, think about the amount of stabbing that took place in this crime scene. I mean, I'm surprised, the perpetrator didn't, the perpetrator was possibly wearing gloves or some type of guard on these bigger knives. It just seems to me like, wow, you didn't cut yourself, because that can happen. But there is, at least on a K-bar, if that was indeed the murder weapon, there's like that kind of guard there. You would expect, I would think there'd be more than a spot if you cut yourself in a stabbing like this.
Yeah, 100%. Plus, I mean, if he cut himself, like you mentioned, it wouldn't have been on the handrail, it would have been during the commission of the crime. So we would have expected more blood DNA at the scene.
That's what I think I think if there were DNA mixtures with a perpetrator's blood somewhere in the room or rooms, I think we possibly might know about that by now, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. So you meant, yeah, no, yeah, 100%. You mentioned Howard Bloom earlier, and in reading his books and stuff, he recently came out with an article that he thought that one of the motives behind Bryan Kohberger's, behind why Bryan Kohberger may have committed this crime, is that he was trying to either get the affection or the attention of his professor, Dr. Katherine Ramsland, who studies forensic criminology in DeSales University. She wrote the autobiography with BTK and many, many other serial killers she's been in contact with. And what do you think about that theory? Do you think there's anything to it? Do you think that maybe perhaps he was trying to either stump or somehow get closer to Dr. Ramsland?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't. I mean, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong about that, but no, I don't believe that at all.
What do you think? If you had to take a guess on what the motive was, what do you think it would have been?
I've said this on my channel before. Because have you been to the house to King Road?
Not yet. No. I mean, it's been knocked down, but I've not been to Moscow yet. I do plan
Yeah.
on going.
Okay. I just didn't know if like in the beginning you had been there or not, or anytime, throughout this whole thing. Just based on my like having been there and walked around many times and just what we know about the crime scene. And, my feeling has always been that this was personally a sexually motivated crime, and that there was one person who was the target and that it spun out of control. And I hate to say that because the whole thing is out of control. Even targeting one person is out of control. But just because a sexual assault was not committed doesn't mean or may not have even been intended. It doesn't mean that a crime can't be sexually motivated. Just the act of killing somebody can be sexually arousing to some people.
Yeah.
So I kind of always thought that because Maddie's room appeared to be the first place the killer went to that evening, and that Kaylee wasn't really living there, I kind of always thought that Maddie was the target. And if you go to the house, you go up that driveway, here's King 1122 King Road, and here's the apartment building, and you go up that driveway, and then you kind of go like this, and there's that parking area. I mean, I was shocked when I got there the first time, and you could see right into Maddie's bedroom. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Like, and there's the pink M and the pink boots. I mean, it's like X marks the spot. So I kind of always thought that she was the target. Kaylee was unfortunately there, and probably woke up, and this whole thing spiraled. And I think that sheath was kind of just, I don't know if it was placed there because there was going to be something going on in this person's mind. And then things just kind of went off the rails according to the killer's plan. So I just think it all spun out of control. My personal opinion, I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong in all this. Like, I don't think this person went in there intending to kill. Like, I'm going to go in there and kill 4 people, but that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. If we find out at trial I'm wrong, I'll eat my words.
You see, for me, I think there's more to it. I think he was trying to search for himself, and I think that he was finding a lot of similarities in himself with perhaps some of these people that he was meeting online during his DeSales survey, during movies, those type of things, and also other persons who have committed violent crimes, such as Ted Bundy. I think he was infatuated with them. I think he saw himself in them. I think he was trying to self-diagnose himself at a very young age as being a psychopath and a sociopath. I think he was aware of the fact that he was a psychopath and a sociopath based on his search history and what he was searching for. I think that when you look at when did he purchase the knife? He purchased the knife in March of 2022. So before he even moved to Moscow, before he would have ever came in contact with anybody, he purchased a balaclava mask also while he was in Pennsylvania. And so while he was there, this was the height of his life. He was graduating with his master's. He was recommended to the PhD program. He was, everything was going good. He completely turned his life around. And yet at this time is when he's looking at purchasing these things. Now, I know that his professor, Dr. Bolger, is going to say that DeSales University survey was part of his thesis. However, that didn't start until about a month and a half before his graduation. And she herself put in an interview stated that he didn't even get a chance to use it because he ran out of time. So to me, it was more so because he was trying to connect with other people. Now, I look at what Howard Bloom said as far as trying to maybe perhaps get the affection or the attention of Dr. Ramsland. And to me, it's very much so like BTK, who his crimes were sexually motivated. However, another avenue of him getting off on his crime was taunting the media and law enforcement. Now, if Bryan Kohberger is this person that everybody claims is, that he has to be the smartest person in the room and he somehow looks down upon women and things of that nature, I would see that it'd be highly likely that he would try to stump and get off on stumping somebody as high up as Dr. Ramsland, somebody who has investigated other serial killers and mass murderers. And I think he may try to get off on that. Now, Dr. Ramsland made a statement, and she said something to the effect that she's not had any correspondence with Bryan Kohberger while at WSU, and he has not contacted her since his arrest. That tells me that he contacted her while he was at WSU. It's just that there was no correspondence. It was unprovoked, and it wasn't responded to. So what he was responding or emailing her, I don't know. You know, if it was just mere clippings or articles of the crime, maybe he was trying to grab her attention to get involved in it. But I do think that there could be something there. What do you think?
Yeah, but see, I don't think that. But see, like, I've interviewed Dr. Ramsland many times, and when she interviewed BTK, you know, she was writing a book. She's studying him. You know, I've talked to her about BTK and how she corresponds with him and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying he's 100% wrong. I'm just saying it's not something I believe to be true. Again, I'll eat my words if I find out that that I'm wrong. And here's the thing, like, let's say he was doing the survey for, to do research or to research, like, find out more about, crimes or who he could be or whatever, like what you were saying. It still doesn't mean that it couldn't be a sexually motivated crime, or that he didn't idolize Ted Bundy or what have you, or he wasn't trying to be like Ted Bundy or what have you. So I'm just saying, like, this is kind of how I view it, or what my theory is. So I did always kind of wonder about the Ted Bundy thing. Like, before the Dateline thing came on, I was like, this does seem a little Bundy-esque, because I had interviewed one of the Bundy survivors a couple of years back. It was actually very creepy. She survived the attack at the Chi Omega house, and it is kind of Bundy-esque. But yeah, like, I don't know. This certainly was not. Let's say Bryan Kohberger is the perpetrator here. Like, he is indeed guilty, and that's not been proven yet. He's entitled to a fair trial. This was far from the perfect crime. I mean, let's say he did it. You don't drive your white Hyundai Elantra, up to the crime scene and leave a sheath with your DNA on it. It's very bad moves, if he is indeed the perpetrator.
Yeah. Well, I think BTK left the gun at one scene, didn't he? And then he had to go back and get it.
I don't know the specifics of BTK's crimes. I interviewed Dr. Ramsland about her dealings with BTK. He frankly disgusts me. I tried reading about him a little bit, and I'm just horrified by all of it. And I've interviewed his daughter too, but he may very well have. I don't know.
Yeah.
So do you think he did? Are you thinking that was left on purpose?
I go back and forth with that. I don't think so.
Mistake.
I think it was a mistake too. So what we learned from Steve is the fact that some of the different injuries that Kaylee may have had, he mentioned in an interview that I had with him that the injuries that Kaylee sustained to her face, had she not been stabbed, she would have lost her life. Due to that, the defense is arguing two different perpetrators, two different weapons because of the different type of injuries. Me personally, I think it's the same weapon used in two different ways, probably the bottom end of the knife. But you have Maddie, who was who is, from all accounts, from what I understand, her life was taken, and it wasn't as ferocious or as brutal as the way Kaylee's life was taken. And then you have another scene on the second floor where you have Xana on the floor. And again, all accounts are that there's something different with Ethan. According to Dateline, this person, allegedly Bryan Kohberger, carves, and they use the term carve, carves something into his leg. That tells me something about the guy. That one, he's lost it on probably the two people that he was not expecting to be there, and that he had this fantasy or motive in his mind, and these two individuals, Kaylee and Ethan, disrupted it from happening. What do you think about those two things, and what do you think about the term that they use, carved? What do you think that means? Do you think that means what does that mean? Like a turkey, like a tree? What do you think that means?
I mean, I heard when I heard that on the Dateline, there was a text message floating around online about that a long time ago. And yeah, I don't know. It just sounds really, really awful. So I'm not really sure what that means. But maybe that's a signature. Who knows? I guess we'll find out more about it. But I think that, if Steve Goncalves, what he said, I know what he said to you. It sounded like she had been punched in the face a lot. That to me sounds like, the whole thing, because she woke up and she fought, which is just horrific. I mean, no parent should have to hear about that or listen to that. So, yeah, very well maybe. Ethan, it was my understanding that he was kind of like asleep there. So as far as like, if he was killed, as Dateline said, with one strike to an artery, I don't understand the need to carve anything. I mean, Xana's the one who was fighting for her life. So I don't get it. Maybe it's a signature. Maybe it is.
Yeah, it definitely could be.
What do you think of it?
Like I said, I think he was taking his frustrations out on a fantasy that he had. If it ends up being that it was Maddie and Xana, didn't they both work at the Mad Greek?
They did.
And so, the Mad Greek is something that is listed as a vegan restaurant. Now, right. I know the Mad Greek said that he's never been there and those type of things, but he may have gone there, saw his affection, and left before purchasing ever anything, because he knew that was his targets. But to me, that tells me that he had an idea of something, and it involved Maddie and Xana, and it didn't involve Ethan and Kaylee, and he took out his anger on them for being there and for ruining whatever it is that he was planning on doing with them that night. I strongly suspect that played a huge role. If it wasn't that, it could also be the fact that maybe he saw, Ethan, somebody who he could never be, and he took out his anger on that. I mean, it's twofold, I think, in that opinion, in that scenario. And the only person that really knows would be him. But yeah, to me, it just kind of told me that he had a plan of something else, and it went awry. As far as leaving the knife sheath behind, I don't think he did it on purpose. The main reason behind that is that at 4:17 we hear the what's going on in Xana's room, and at the same time Murphy is barking outside. So the only way Murphy could have gone outside is if the back glass door was left open. Now, when I found out about that, initially that went through my mind, and then when we also had that May 2020 document that Kohberger wrote where he was talking about not contaminating a scene, the first thing that went through my mind was that the person that committed this crime was very methodical, and he took the time to think about everything. The reason why you only touch the door once is because every time you touch it after the fact is an opportunity to leave DNA behind. So you open the door once, you leave DNA behind, you close it, that's twice, you open it again to leave, that's 3 different times. And on the third time, when you're opening it to leave, you just exhausted yourself. You possibly are breathing heavy, you're sweating, those type of things. And if that's the most opportune time to leave DNA behind. And when you go through that May 2020 document that he wrote, he specifically said, go check the doors, doorknobs, stuff like that for DNA as the person was leaving the house. So for those two things to have happened, that were two huge clues for me that told me that this guy was very conscientious of not leaving his DNA behind. That tells me there's no way he would have left something else behind on purpose, something that he would have touched. I strongly disbelieve that. I think it was left on accident. I think maybe perhaps he was in the middle of doing whatever it is he was doing. We all suspect we know what it was. Dylan is, she says that she hears who she thought was Kaylee going up the stairs with Murphy. That's probably Xana. And, he's probably interrupted by Xana, goes back down to chase Xana. Xana runs to her boyfriend. Murphy runs outside. Kohberger chases her down the hall and forgets the knife sheath throughout the entire thing. That's my thoughts on how it went down that night. What do you think?
Oh, so you believe the Dateline theory that she ran up the steps to see what was going on, like that somebody's here? Do you think that was Xana?
Yeah, I had known for a while that the backsliding glass door was open. I kind of put that together a while ago. Some folks had speculated that the front door was open. Chief Fry mentioned in I think it was his second conference, that he wasn't aware of the front door. He mentioned it twice, once in a conference, once he was interviewed near Christmas. There was a Christmas parade going on. He was asked about the front door. He says he doesn't remember the front door. And then in a second press conference, he said that the door was still open when officers arrived. So that told me that the backsliding glass door was what was remained open, and that they had believed it was open the entire time. And so I was starting to pick up little details here and there from what they were going through. And then I confirmed that a little bit later on through some of my sources that ended up being the case. But yeah, I think that if she went upstairs with Xana, that means Murphy would have come downstairs. Now, what can we deduce? We can deduce that the intruder, whoever it is, one of their MOs is leaving doors open. Now, is it possible that the intruder went to Kaylee's room first, opened that door and left it open because he didn't see anybody inside? And that's how Murphy goes downstairs, alerts Xana. Xana's like, what are you doing here? Turns around, takes him back upstairs. As she's going upstairs, sees in the kitchen that the sliding glass door is left open. Can probably hear something going on, says something audibly. I think somebody's here. And then, if Dylan heard her, there's a good chance that the intruder heard her, especially if the doors are open. And we find out later that through documents that when officers went into the house, that Kaylee's bedroom door was open and Murphy was in there and he had no blood or anything on him. But the doors were left open on Kaylee's room, Xana's room, and Maddie's room. All of them were left open. None of them were closed. And the backsliding glass door. I think there's more to that, in my opinion.
Do you, so you subscribe to the Dateline theory, or the theory that was aired in Dateline? You believe that theory? Do you think Ethan was asleep, or do you think Xana was able to awaken him?
I think he was asleep. One of the things that I have seen that I had mentioned earlier would lead me to believe that Howard Bloom mentioned in his book that he believed that it was a slash to the throat. Based on the things that I've seen, I would say that I would come to that same agreement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they said one blow to an artery, so that seems like that would be what would be visible if you're asleep, in bed.
Right. There would be certain things like coughing up blood that would show spatter that would be visible.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just awful. I always thought possibly he had encountered Xana, or the killer had encountered Xana, I should say, somewhere like in the hallway. I never thought she ran upstairs. So when I saw that in Dateline, I was like, oh, wow. I mean, I'm not saying it, I'd never thought it was possible, but I always thought she possibly heard something and encountered him on that second floor.
Well, I think it was actually in the documents.
Started to run. I never thought he went looking for her in her bedroom.
I think I could have swore I saw it in the defense's documents that they were, when they were referring to Dylan's testimonies, they went through quite a few of them. And in one of her testimonies, she mentioned hearing who she thought was Kaylee going upstairs with Murphy.
Right.
And then hearing, I think someone's here. And
well, I thought they said she heard them, like she thought it was Kaylee.
Right. She thought it was Kaylee.
And there was something about the stairs. I didn't realize she said she thought she was, maybe I'm misremembering that, because there was so many with the eyebrow stuff. They went through so much stuff talking about the different descriptions of what she said. But yeah, I don't think I remembered I remembered the hearing of the sound of her, what sounded like her possibly playing with Murphy.
Right.
But I didn't. Yeah, that makes sense, though. I never put it together of them going upstairs together, the dog and Kaylee, but that would make sense with Xana.
Right. Yeah. So, because I believe it was the defense's document. They were trying to say that Dylan's testimony had changed in multiple different places, and they talked about how she thought, and one of the questions was the fact that law enforcement put in the term "thought" because they're like, "What she didn't say. She thought it was Kaylee.
She thought it was Maddie." Or
right,
I'm sorry. She thought it was Kaylee with the dog.
She thought it was Kaylee.
Kaylee, but
yeah, and the defense was arguing. Yeah, the defense was arguing. Well, she didn't say she thought it was her. That's that's law enforcement saying that she thought it was her because they believe it was actually Xana, because at that point Kaylee's life had already been taken, and so they say that she's the one that goes upstairs, which makes sense, because if she's hearing a struggle or if she's feeling a draft from the back sliding glass door being open and she has the thought that somebody's in the house, I think she's waking up Ethan. Now, if Murphy's the one that runs into the room and she's just like, "Hey, how did you get out of your room? I'm going to take you back upstairs." She's probably not waking up Ethan. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Or maybe the dog's like coming downstairs because he's like, there's some weird stuff going on upstairs. Like, the dog is like, what the heck? I mean, because I thought too, they had said this dog was not much of a barker early on. This was a pretty calm, chill dog. And, this dog's probably like, God only knows, all hell's breaking loose upstairs. Personally, too, I find it hard to believe that this could all occur in silence. I mean, I'm thinking if Kaylee is being attacked so viciously that there had to be some type of sound. And is that being left out of these documents because they just don't want that out there right now? Well, I mean, if Kaylee is being like punched in the face over and over again, and also, I mean, there's got to be, and she wakes up, at first you might be shocked and you're not making any noise, but there's got to be something going on. I mean, if Maddie's life was taken very quickly and, that happened, I can see not a lot of noise being made. But with Kaylee, it sounds like there may have been more going on there. So I would think maybe there would be more.
Well, you said that you had said that Xana fought tooth and nail, right?
Well, that's her father had told an Arizona news outlet that she put up a hell of a fight or something to that effect shortly after this happened. And it's my understanding that, that some of her fingers were almost severed, or, I don't know the whole detail of that.
Well, Dateline,
I try to be careful what I say, that I don't know.
No, I understand.
I don't need like clips of me saying something that's not true floating around there. But, it's my understanding she fought,
well, the only thing is, I mean, Dateline aired the 417 noises. Did it sound like somebody fighting for their life?
Well, I did not make out that what they think that noise was did not sound like it to me. What they called that in the PCA. So, I mean, it's a noise from a security camera. So, no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you would think
the dog bark sounded pretty clear.
The dog bark, but this is a camera A dog barking is a lot different than somebody
Right.
inside a house, possibly with windows closed,
Right.
doing
No, I
whatever,
understand that. I
you know?
understand that. But what I'm saying is I don't hear screams. I don't hear yells. You hear whimpers. You can hear voices, but you don't hear scream. You don't hear somebody yelling. So to
I didn't
me,
even hear this whimper that they talked about. I mean, I played it over and over. You have the footage, you said. So do you
I
hear this
hear,
whimper they talk about?
I just hear what's there. It's like, it sounds like voices, like talking. To be honest with you, it sounds like talking. You can't make it out. It's what they played. It just, I mean, it sounds kind of like what Charlie Brown, when the adults were talking and Charlie
Right.
Brown.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I hear. And, you don't hear screams, yelling, kicking, slamming. You hear a thud, like the thud that we heard. And that could be a door closing. That could be, honestly, to me, it sounds like somebody jumping on the bed and the bed scooching up against the wall, like boom, like boof, like that kind of noise is what I hear. But I don't hear those other sounds, which is something that you might expect because Dylan didn't call 911. She didn't hear those noises either. That's one of the reasons why she's probably, a little bit confused. She sees something that's scary, but she's not hearing the sounds that are attributed to those type of what she's thinking. So maybe she's thinking it's a prank, and a scary one at that, and she doesn't know what's going on. So to me, I think that most of these victims were surprised. I think fear took over those that may have came in that were alert when they were attacked. And I think that, somebody knew where to hit, knew where to strike. And
That's a good point too. It's entirely possible. Yeah, it's entirely possible. I'm not saying I'm just saying I find it hard to believe there wasn't more noise. But I again have not been through something like this in I have nothing to compare it to.
right.
I've not experienced something like this at all. And these were kids that were clearly had been out partying. So, and they're getting ready for bed. I mean, Xana was, getting her DoorDash or in the process of eating her DoorDash. So, but yeah, I just think that, I'm not saying there had to be huge screams and stuff, but I was just, especially with some of the things, I would maybe have expected a little bit of noise.
I agree with you, but I think that goes to the means of the crime, right? You have motive, means, and opportunity, and the means here is more than just somebody able to wield a knife. It's somebody able to go in there, not leave very much DNA behind of their own, not take a lot of DNA with them, not leave a trail following where they were going, strike, knowing where to strike, and not leave a lot of noise or sound. There's not very many people that can commit a crime like that. I know a lot of people look at, for instance, some of these fraternity guys, that's not, that quiet, that meticulous is not a symptom or something that you see in common with somebody losing their mind over roids in a roid rage incident. That's not common in a love struck incident where you have somebody who, like Jack DeCour, Kaylee's ex, they broke up. She was moving to Texas. She was leaving him. If he was love struck, he was intoxicated that night as well, going in meticulously, not leaving DNA behind, not screaming, not yelling, not those sounds of rage aren't present in any of the audio or anything like that. That just kind of tells me that it goes to the type of person that committed this crime. You're looking at somebody who's studied this crime. You're looking at somebody who has wanted to do something like this, who planned it out. That's one of the reasons why I believe early on in this investigation, law enforcement mentioned that the house may be the target, because in order for somebody to commit a crime like this, they would have had to surveil the house for a certain amount of time and get a layout and an understanding of the people that are inside of the house, their ins and goings and things of that nature. And so that just kind of tells me leans more towards somebody like Bryan Kohberger. What do you think?
Well, I do believe so, again, I do think whoever did this was familiar with the house. I'm not, as I said, there's a trial to be had. I'm not going to convict him before his trial. But I really do think just being there, I think that it would be a very easy house to surveil. I think that too, if you look at all those body cameras, the body worn cameras of the police visits to the house, I mean, you could probably get into that house. I'm sure they didn't keep it locked up. So I just think that I still don't think the person who committed this crime went in there planning to kill 4 people. I really don't. I don't believe that. I mean, do you believe that?
No, I think if I had to take a guess, I think that the plan, this is just my speculation. I think he went in there for one person. I think he was actually planning on taking that person out of that house. But because somebody, whether it was Maddie or Kaylee, I suspect it was one of them, because he went straight up to the 3rd floor. He went straight up to the 3rd floor. I don't know if he went into Kaylee's room or not. The door was open. The other doors that were open had people that lost their lives. The killer went into those rooms. I would assume, that if Kaylee living with roommates, having a young dog, because I think he was still a puppy at the time, would have kept him in her room and not let him roam around at night. And so for him to have been able to get down to Xana's room, for Dylan to have heard Xana go upstairs with him, tells me he opened that door. Now, whether that was the first door open or the second door open, I don't know. But, it sounds like it was the first one, because, the dog had enough time to go downstairs and to alert Xana, and then Xana come upstairs a little bit before coming in contact with him. So, or at least before saying, I think somebody's here, and coming to that understanding and turning around and going back towards her bedroom where Ethan is. To me, well, put it this way, his alibi, partial alibi, he claims he was at Walleye Park at some point. Are you aware that that's the location that Joyce LePage's body was found back in the early 70s? Joyce LePage attended WSU. She is, to some, possibly Ted Bundy's first victim. And this so happens to be the same place that Bryan Kohberger says that he was out at. I wouldn't have been surprised if he was planning on taking somebody there.
People have brought that up to me actually on my YouTube channel. And I think it's interesting for sure. But yeah, and people have also brought up that as a theory that possibly there was a plan to abduct one of the girls, the young women. And I think that is interesting. That goes back to my theory of this being a sexually motivated crime. And the whole Wawawi, I always mispronounce it. I had to call the park the first time I ever said it during the alibi thing. I was like, how do you say your park's name? It was kind of funny actually, because I'm like, I'm never going to be able to say this on the air. Wawawi Park, I think is what it is. It's but yeah, I find it really interesting, and it's crazy actually. But I agree with you. I mean, I think there was one target. I do agree with you. I wanted to go back. I really didn't answer your first question. I kind of asked you a question. Sorry. It's like an occupational habit. I start asking people questions.
I understand.
But I think it's an easy place to surveil. And I think whoever did this did plan it out. It didn't go according to plan. But yeah, it's just, but the whole house thing, to me, yeah, you might have targeted the house, but you still had to know where you were going in that house. So that's my thing about it. So it's like, was it the house, or was it the person in the house? Or did you find the house first and then you found the person in the house? So I'll be interested to see if they can answer that question. That whole park thing with the theory about it being a Ted Bundy, similarities to Ted Bundy. Again, very interesting. Again, that brings us back to Dateline and the Ted Bundy searches and the watching the Ted Bundy documentary on the YouTube and all of that stuff. So, I mean, there are shades of Ted Bundy here.
I mean, it goes further than that. Bryan Kohberger's mom wrote an op-ed about Ted Bundy.
Opposing the death penalty.
Exactly. And then his sister shared something on Twitter that was called "The Stranger Beside Me" or something of that nature, which was the title of it. Was a song, like an emo song referencing some weird stuff. And Ted Bundy, I think, was a big, I guess, thought of when that song came out. And his sister was sharing that. And then they had a mural of of some mountaintop. I can't remember. I know the live chat will tell me here in a minute. And it was the same mountaintop that 2 of Ted Bundy's victims were found. And that was in their basement. And so there's some weird Bundy connections with the entire, going back for a while now when it comes to Bryan Kohberger. It's very interesting. You know, I did look up what he was. So some of those things that he was searching for, like Ted Bundy, I think one of them was on August 16th. School hadn't started yet. And so the only thing that I think he would have been aware of would have been, you know, his TA stuff. And the classes that he was taking for his TA were in criminal justice. I think one of them was like criminology 101, and the other one was like 300 criminology something. Neither were on psychology or on things that you would look up why a serial killer does what they do or anything like that. So to me, I think there's something there to the Bundy searches and it being more than just him searching it for school related issues.
I mean, it very well could be. I'd like to know more about his searches before then, though. I mean, don't you think that's kind of relevant too? I mean, is the Bundy stuff? I mean, let's say it wasn't for school. It's not. There's no way it just started in August.
No. He even apparently attacked another professor who was written on Bundy. It was in the Dateline that he would belittle her because English wasn't her first language.
Yeah, the one who wrote the paper or whatever.
Yeah, on Bundy. And so it sounds like he thought he knew everything. I mean, that's what everybody that comes forward has said that has had any interaction with him in there at their time.
That's what some of the students at DeSales would say about Dr. Ramsland, like in that class that she taught, that he would, I mean, Dr. Ramsland's a world-renowned expert, and he would push back on her, and it was like he knew more than Dr. Ramsland about the subject matter. So, I mean, it seems to be like a common theme. But I mean, the defense is going to say that's because he's socially awkward and has autism, level 1 autism or whatever. But it'll be interesting to see, what happens at trial. I personally think he wants to testify. I could be wrong about that, but I think he wants to testify. I think that's why they keep saying he'd be a bad witness, because I think he wants to testify. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I think that he probably does. I don't know if he will. I think he's very disciplined. One of the things that that I noticed in the PCA, it stated that on November 14th, he connected to a tower that gave signal or that covered the King Road residence in Moscow, but they don't believe he was there, and they don't believe that he ever returned back to Moscow. For a killer to not return back to the scene multiple times, that takes a lot of discipline. And so, I strongly suspect that he didn't follow them online until after the murders. I do think he was following them, but I don't think it was before the murders. I think that was afterwards. And the victims? The victims, correct. I think there's enough evidence there, whether it be from Shadow Dragon and Andrew Garrett from Andrew Garrett Discoveries. I'm not sure if you saw that interview I had with him.
I did watch. I was listening to it while I was working one day. Like I was like typing and listening at the same time.
Yeah. He put in Bryan Kohberger's
all that stuff. Like
yeah. What he did was he did a background check on Bryan Kohberger through Clear, which is what you use for TSA, and then he was able to gather all of his email addresses that he has used for credit applications and those type of things, stuff that can be verified going back to him. And from there, he was able to correlate those with some profiles on social media, and they were showing that they were following Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana. In fact, Steve had told me that they had gotten word or Christy actually had told me they had gotten word of Bryan Kohberger's name, that they were going to arrest him before his arrest. And they did the search before the world knew who Bryan Kohberger was. They searched him on Instagram, and they were able to find the Instagram profile that was connected to his DeSales University email address. I believe it was either that one or his WSU, one of the two, but it was a school-related email address. And that profile was following Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. Now, I think it does make a difference if he was following them before November 13th or not, because after November 13th, there was a lot of us that were following them.
Right.
And so, I think that, he planned this out. This was a meticulous planning. He planned somebody who couldn't get tracked back to him. A lot of people ask why didn't, if he was having problems with his professor, John Snyder, or the female PhD student who thought that he broke into her house, or any of those things, why not target those people? Well, it'd come back to him. This guy had started the planning, in my opinion, when he purchased the knife back in March of 2022. That was before he moved there. I think he moved there with the expectation and the anticipation that he was going to commit this crime. If he committed the crime, obviously, I mean, he's innocent until proven guilty. If he committed the crime, purchase of the knife sheath tells me, and when he purchased it, tells me that this was planning a long time ago.
So you think that the victims were, you think that they were selected because he didn't have a connection to them?
Yes.
Okay. But you think he started following them on Instagram after the homicides, but not before? But what about the photos that do you have the photos that Dateline, the similar photos that Dateline showed with him following friends of the victims?
I don't have those photos. I have a list of all the people he was following, though. Mm-hmm. It probably wouldn't be that hard to go through all the list and try to figure out which ones were friends also with Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. I don't think there was any correlation between Kohberger and Ethan on anything online. And so I'd have to go through there and look at it. But yeah, the Shadow Dragon has, and the document is out there.
I have it. It's I find it kind of hard to follow, honestly.
It is weird.
What's that?
I said it's weird. There's like two different lists. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, the lists and then the lines and the.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, but I think he started planning this. I think some of those survey questions were like, how did you choose your victim? Those played heavy on his mind when he was planning this crime. And I think that he chose if I had to take a guess, I think he went out one night and he was looking for the biggest party, with a house full of people, because he knew that would be an easy way to cover his tracks DNA wise if there was a lot of traction in and out of the house. I think he had illusions of grandeur, I think is what he had written down as well. And I think there was some text messages between him and somebody else referencing that he wanted to be a detective and solve high profile crimes. He mentioned that it would be something that would be hard to do, blah, blah, blah. It's hard to get in that field. However, at this time, I mean, the world was falling apart. His world was falling apart. He was losing his TA job. There was no way in hell he was going to get the intern police department job. Everything that he had worked for was falling apart. I think a part of why he committed the crime, or a certain aspect of it, was to prove he was smarter than everybody. And, I think he wanted the world to know that, and he wanted to create a high profile crime. One of the reasons why I believe that he didn't care for Kaylee's new car being outside or Ethan's Jeep being there is that he wanted a high profile crime, whether it's more like, let's just say he took somebody from the house. You have one person missing out of a house full of 6. They're gone. Maybe they were found dead later. It's a big mystery. That's probably going to make it'd be a high profile crime. Or if you have multiple victims, that's also going to equate to a high profile crime. I think that was part of his objective, was he wanted a high profile crime. He wanted to be a part of a high profile crime when he couldn't be the police officer. I mean, there's only 2 other roles, either the victim or the killer. And I don't think he wants to be a victim of a high profile crime. So I think there's a lot that goes into why he did it. I don't think it's a simple answer, but I think there's quite a bit to it.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, that's it's a lot. I mean, that's very interesting. I never really thought about him wanting to solve high profile crimes. I didn't see that text message. I knew that he wanted to help rural police departments allegedly with
Oh,
some things.
I thought that was a backhanded comment. I thought he was the way he put it. He's like, I want to help rural officers with police forensics, was like him saying, I want to help these backwoods police officers learn how to use a phone. That's the way I took it.
Cloud-based forensics or something like that. Is that what you said? Something to that effect.
Right. Yeah. But he was talking about helping rural law enforcement, learn about the phone basically. So I took that as a backhanded comment when he wrote that in his essay.
I want to know if we're going to find out during the trial why he didn't get the internship at Pullman Police Department, and if that's believed to be a piece of this.
Well, I think it happened twice, because he spoke with the chief of police in April. There was an email that was circulating about him talking about the intern chief police position. Then he again applied in the fall. So if he's applying in the fall, that tells me he didn't get in the spring when he applied and he spoke to them in the spring. My thoughts are he's probably doesn't have the cleanest record. He's a heroin addict at one point in his life.
Right.
He was forced to resign from his position as a law enforcement or security guard at the high school that he was at, the same school in which he was forced to move classes from the law enforcement class to the HVAC class, and then ultimately forced to go to homeschooling his junior year and his senior year of high school. He ended up also taking it online as well. All those things and all those factors, also the arrest for the theft. Now that's not out there. It's been expunged or whatnot. Law enforcement would have access to that, especially going through a background check for somebody wanting to be in law enforcement. He was 19 years old at the time of that arrest. So it wasn't a juvenile. He was an adult. He got it expunged because I believe he took like a deferred adjudication. I think he did something in efforts to get it dropped and released. Anyways, I think rehab was a part of that deferred adjudication. I think all those things don't make him a great candidate for being a police officer. I wouldn't be surprised if they told him, hey, you know what, come up here, be here a semester, apply again in the fall. You got to be there for 3 years or 2 years anyways. You do well and we'll pick you up in the fall. And by the time the fall comes around, he's fighting with his professor. He's going through behavioral programs. Within a month that he's there, there's a behavioral program. Now, I know the defense dropped in a document saying that Bryan Kohberger was cleared of his investigation from female students' accusations. But one thing that I say is if he was cleared, that means there's an investigation. If he was investigated, that means there was an accusation. Now, what it means to me is this is probably a he said, she said, which is why those young ladies were now documenting things. There was what was called the Bryan tally that came out in the first Dateline episode. And what that told me is these young ladies reported him. It was a he said, she said, and they said, hey, if you want this to stick or if you want something to be done, you need to document it. And that's why they were documenting things around that time and leading up to his termination as a
TA. It's very possible. I just find it astounding that he was having so many problems in that role. I mean, maybe he just can't function in a role where he has authority. You know what I mean? It's really stunning to me that he was having such huge issues after he worked so hard to get to this point. And yet he gets here and he's just like having all of these crazy problems. I do think though, the one search, I don't know, you may disagree with me because you kind of said earlier, you think that he was doing these searches because they were about himself. Like there was the one about signs of sociopathy or something in a college student.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thought that wasn't about him. I thought that was about, because he did that apparently around the same time there was an issue with one of the students. And I kind of thought that might be related to whatever that interaction was, like that he was thinking somebody around him was like a sociopath or something like that. So I don't know if you kind of made that connection. I mean, this was all in the Dateline episode that maybe he was thinking the college kids were the ones that were messed up, just based on the search that he did.
See, I believe that one was 5 days after his traffic stop at WSU. See, because he had 2 traffic stops, and 5 days after each traffic stop, he had done some interesting searches. I know that there was one traffic stop, which was the night that law enforcement believes he was surveilling the house. He ended up getting a citation for no seatbelt. He argued with the officer. 5 days after that, he's Google searching, how and when an officer can detain you, those type of things. So to me, it just kind of tells me that things stuck with him and he couldn't get over negative interactions and those type of things. And so that tells me that his searches, I think, had more to do with him. I mean, he's very self-aware. Even when he was a younger man, he talked on Tappa Talk about how he has no feelings, no emotions. He called his father, and that he treats his father like an a-hole. He said that, it was a sack of meat and people are a sack of meat, and all these things, which was, I think he was influenced by movies. It sounded very much like Patrick Bateman from the movie American Psycho, which I'll tell you this, I think he liked movies. One of the things that I believe the reason behind that is, do you remember when that young lady said that he had said something about her having good birthing hips?
Yes.
Well,
on the date. Yes.
Yeah. That's from a movie called Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp. And in that movie, Johnny Depp is a vampire from a long time ago. And he's weird, he's awkward, and all these things, a lot of what I think Bryan Kohberger sees himself as. And one of the jokes that he makes, or one of the lines is, because he's attracted to a female, is that she has good birthing hips. Yikes. And so, you see the image that he took immediately, or at 10:30 a.m., the screenshot with the headphones. I mean, very similar to American Psycho, where Patrick Bateman is walking around with headphones. The thumbs up is also in there. It's also, the thumbs up can also be contributed to, was it Ted Bundy did the same thumbs up posture move in court. So I think he was a movie buff. I think he saw himself in a lot of these things. I think he was very self-aware of who he was and the problems that he had. And so when he was Google searching these things, I think he's a narcissist. He's too indulgent to himself to think about other people. And if they're a psychopath, I think he was researching himself.
I mean, it's entirely possible, and you make a good point, especially with all of those Tappa Talk posts from when he was a teenager. I mean, he talked a lot about himself. So it's nuts, really. I mean, it's really nuts about how, yeah. I mean, he's such a loner too. It's like he lives in his own head, and obviously
that's the thing too, right?
Sorry.
That's the thing too. This is the first time he's ever lived on his own.
That's true. Yeah. He may have just had, it's just, he maybe couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Well, I think he foresaw it. I mean, the purchase of the knife, the purchase of the balaclava mask, the purchase of the backpack, all in Pennsylvania, that can't be found. I think it was November 10th. He started doing a forensic deletion of his computer at work and those type of things. He ended up purchasing, from what I understand, there was a receipt and a tag for a Dickie suit that was found in his apartment complex that led to a purchase of a jumpsuit. Allegedly, I haven't confirmed this, but I have a really good reason to believe that it was purchased within a couple of days of the murders, within a few days of the murders. So something happened, and he escalated right at the end there, around November 10th. But he also stopped using his credit card, I believe, as well. And he started taking withdrawals from the ATM and making cash purchases. So something happened there around November 10th. But to me, the purchase of the knife, the purchase of the balaclava mask, the backpack, all that stuff tells me that he was planning on this before he even moved out there. And, I think he saw the opportunity of him being alone for the first time as an opportunity to commit this crime. I strongly suspect that, had he lived on his own beforehand, if he committed this crime, then he probably would have had other victims beforehand, in my opinion.
Can you tell me about the backpack? Because you keep referencing a backpack, and I don't know about the backpack. I know about the balaclava mask, but I think I'm missing the backpack.
I saw it in a document. I'd have to go through and go through them all. But yeah, he had purchased, I want to say it was with the balaclava mask that the backpack was purchased from the Dick's Sporting Goods store. But I have to go back and look at the documents. But yeah, he did definitely purchase a backpack while he was in Pennsylvania.
Okay, because I only saw the balaclava at the Dick's in Pennsylvania. I didn't see the mention of the backpack unless I missed that, because that was like the self-authentication of records document, I think.
Yeah, I'd have to go back, but I'm fairly positive. I know he purchased a backpack. I'm fairly positive it was in that document. But those are the three things that stuck out to my attention. Now, I think that they're not paying. I don't know how much attention we can pay to the backpack, because I think it's assumed that he took a kill kit. It's possible that he had that same backpack. He could have had a different one. If he's transporting things, let me think about this. Because that would only be like if he's taking off his clothes and he's putting it into the backpack. So it really wouldn't make a difference if he's had that backpack for a long time. Now, it would make a difference if he was taking things out of the backpack and putting them on. Then there could be a DNA transfer from whatever was in the backpack onto the clothing, and then for him to go in there. So if it was solely to take off clothing, then yeah, it probably wouldn't make a difference. He probably could have purchased that a long time ago. Unlike the Dickies clothing, that's something that you want to purchase as close as possible to the event, because, if you have it in your house or in your car or whatever the case may be, there's more of a chance for you to get trace DNA of yourself onto it. So that's why you purchased that late, which is another reason why I believe he didn't leave the sheath behind either. Sorry. I break down things a lot. That's the way my brain works. I apologize.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you at all during this. I apologize. Sometimes okay. I feel like you were done talking and then I started talking. I apologize. So wait, I'm sorry. You said you didn't. I missed the last part you said. I was having trouble. So you said something about him leaving the sheath behind or not. You don't believe he purposely left the sheath behind.
Yeah, no, I don't think he purposely left the sheath behind. Yeah. One of the reasons is that if what I heard is correct, that he purchased the jumpsuit so close to the event. The reason why somebody would do that is if they purchased it while in Pennsylvania per se. Well, then they got to traverse back cross country with it. It's going to be in his car. It's going to be in his apartment. It's going to be in his person. It's going to be mixed in with other items of himself. There's a good chance that you can get trace DNA on it. So the fact that he purchased that item so close to the event date tells me that he would not have left something behind that he had purchased so long ago before, such as the knife sheath. I doubt that he left that on purpose. I know some people think maybe it was a calling card, K-Bar, his name's Kohberger. There's some would sound similar, but I don't think so.
I don't believe that at all. I think it was part of the everything going sideways. Yeah. Personally.
Yeah, I agree. So let's just say that this trial goes on as anticipated on August 11th. Do you think it's going to be a long trial?
They've got it scheduled till November 7th. So, Hitler seems like he likes to keep things going, and he's even made mention of possibly sequestering this jury. Oh my God. If they have to do that, that's going to be a big deal. Judges do not like to sequester juries. So if they do that, they may go they may make the days longer. And even sometimes when they do that, they'll do stuff on Saturdays for like a half a day just to make things go faster. So maybe it'll go more quickly. If he does sequester the jury, I'm kind of hoping for the jury's sake that they don't do that. So I could see it taking that full time. I mean, they've got so many experts and everything on both sides to testify. Plus, the potential, if there's a guilty verdict, for a penalty phase. if there's a guilty verdict, there will be a penalty phase. So that could take some time. So I don't know. I mean, it could take that entire time, or they could wrap it up pretty quickly. But Hitler may keep this train on the tracks and say, let's get this done. Let's get this done. And I don't know. Do you think it'll take the full 3 months?
No, I don't think so.
You don't? Interesting.
No,
Why do you think that?
I don't think that mainly because of the evidence. I think there's a lot of it, but I think mostly a lot of it is irrelevant. As they mentioned, a lot of it is footage that's not relevant. When it comes down to this specific case, it was, you have a guy that, what are they going to go into his past as far as the times that he was around there and then what he did that night. There's not really a connection there between, him and the victims that need to be established as far as like, oh, this is what happened or anything like that. I'll be honest. I've only seen one trial from start to finish, and that's the Karen Reed one so far. I was in law enforcement, so I dealt with law enforcement stuff and through that avenue, but true crime was never my thing. I had my own thing I was working on. But so I say that to say I think that the evidence is pretty straightforward. I think that the evidence is going to come in pretty straightforward. And I think I don't think it'll go as long as, for instance, the Karen Reed case has gone. I think it'll be
really,
I think it'll be shorter. I think that it'll be to the point. I think there's more of just the facts in this case than there is in other cases like the Karen Reed case, where you have to kind of navigate through a lot of witnesses and people's testimony and things of that nature. There's really not a lot of that here. There's Dylan and Bethany. You have some people that knew what the victims were doing up until the time that they got there, but none of that really has anything to do with the crime itself. So they're going to focus in on, what he did and the evidence to convict him for that. The evidence that we've somewhat seen. I'm sure there's a lot more, but in the end, I don't think it's going to be as long as the Karen Reed case, mainly because there's probably a lot less witnesses to testify to. I know they're going to have their experts, and they're going to have experts battling it out for a number of things, but eyewitness testimony and things like that, I think are limited in this case.
So why do you think do you think Hitler just scheduled it out that far then, just for safety's sake, just in case?
Well, I think the defense said that they were going to have a robust and healthy defense and stuff like that. So they got to give them that time in case they do. I just don't see that. I've seen and heard Ann Taylor say a lot of things and make promises and stuff that just haven't come true.
Interesting. Well, that they've got a lot. Like when I was going through her expert disclosures or whatever. Well, not hers, but whatever her filing was, where she was saying, they gave us this and we need more and whatever. I mean, it did seem like the state had a lot of experts that were going to testify, and a lot of that stuff can take a long time. And it really depends on how much of a fight the defense puts up on the state's evidence too. So like if they're willing to stipulate to some things, and they may not be willing to stipulate to much of anything. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it happens, or how it plays out. Yeah,
for sure. All right. So we're going to do a little rapid fire. I have a couple of questions that have come through.
Okay.
And that I want to ask. First, somebody's asking did you interview Eric Grower? Is that accurate?
People have been asking me about that lately. I don't really want to get into that right now.
Okay.
So
all right, no problem.
I need to go revisit that.
No problem. Snickers asks, do you think they'll ever find the murder weapon?
Yikes. I don't know. Some people speculate that they have, but I don't know.
I've confirmed they don't.
Probably would be very hard. I mean, he went, they say the killer went up to a bunch of places. So
so there was a document that came out a couple months back. And in the document, it references the DNA that was found on the sheath. Now, unfortunately, the document missed a word. It said something about the DNA found on the K-bar knife, and it forgot the word sheath. So there was a lot of speculation that the K-bar knife was found. So I asked Steve, and I asked Steve, I was like, hey, there's some people pointing out that in this document that says that they found the K-bar knife. I think because they're referencing the DNA on it, I think they forgot the word sheath. But have you heard that? He said that he called and he confirmed that at that point they did not find it. And so here recently, judge was referencing the, if you're going to be displaying a knife to the jury to have it in a case, etc. A lot of people were speculating if it was a knife. I have confirmed that it is a replica. It is a demonstrous exhibit, not the actual knife. So I don't believe they found it.
Yeah, I was thinking when that came up in that hearing, I'm like, that's got to be a replica. I mean, wouldn't they have? You would think we would have heard about that in a court document if they had found the actual murder weapon.
I agree. And plus, you want to show the jury that the injuries that were sustained were possible with the weapon that they're saying that he's alleged to have used. You can't go in there and say, oh yeah, he just used a knife. And then you look at the nature of the wounds and you see how deep they are. And I haven't seen any injuries. I've not seen any wounds. I'm only assuming based on the descriptions of what's been released that they're pretty severe.
Right.
That you're probably going to want to you're going to want the jury to look at the murder weapon itself, or the potential murder weapon, and say, hey, can this knife commit or do this amount of damage? And I think it'll be fairly obvious once they put it in their hands. It's a fairly large knife.
It's kind of scary big.
So I have a couple of people that are asking you on your opinion. I don't know if I've actually asked your opinion, but do you think it'll actually go on August 11th, or do you think it'll be moved back?
I don't know. There's been some new stuff filed that I'll be covering. I did a live on my channel about it recently, or right before I came on here, actually. The defense has been granted some independent testing. It's sealed, of course. Everything's back to being sealed. We've got that hearing next Wednesday about a continuance. So I really, I don't know. I mean, the judge has been so adamant that this is going to happen, but then at the same time, there's this new analysis, new testing of evidence going on. Plus there's an order to stay in, or to a sealed order for a stayed order or something, like some gobbledygook that's on that site. Have you seen it? Like where it's like do you know what I'm referencing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on with the stayed order? So obviously he stayed his own order about something, but it's sealed. So something's going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. So I mean, it's possible he delays it a little bit, but it's also possible that it goes. We'll see.
Yeah. Up until this stay order thing, or not even that, up until what you just mentioned right now, that there's some new testing that's going to be allowed, I thought for sure it's going on August 11th. A lot of that document that Ann Taylor brought up was written way before the Dateline. These were arguments that she has had for a while, including to have the death penalty thrown out.
Right.
They were shut down. So because of those things, I don't think it was going to get delayed. Now, this new testing stuff that you're mentioning, that is interesting. I need to look into it as well.
I've got it right here, actually.
Is it? Let me see. Let me pull that up too, because I know that they mentioned they were going to do some new testing, but
there's a sealed last Friday sealed motion for emergency order.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then there's all this other sealed order sealing defendant's motion and order for a motion emergency order. There's all this stuff going on behind the scenes and we don't know what it says. So he's allowed some new testing, but then he's got an order that he stayed for an order or something. It's a mess.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go through it piece by piece and try to figure it out. I saw it earlier. I read the objection to the notice of continuance and some of the other stuff, but yeah, everything's sealed. It's getting real. It's getting real. Artworks asks if you're planning on attending the trial and also if you plan on attending CrimeCon in Denver this year.
Yes, I do plan on attending the trial, and I was hoping to attend CrimeCon, but it's going on during the trial. So it's kind of difficult. So I'm not 100% sure on CrimeCon. I was hoping to go to CrimeCon, but I don't know yet.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I plan on going to the trial. I don't plan on being there for the entire trial. I plan on being there probably for the verdict and maybe a little bit of the closing and then the verdict. I think that's probably where I plan on going for. And CrimeCon, it's during the trial, it's going to be hard.
Are you going to CrimeCon?
I thought about it. I'm not sure yet. My Steelers play that weekend too, so I'll be honest. I don't miss a game, guys. I don't miss a game. Star Justice
Steelers.
I don't. I haven't missed a game in a while. Nah, I don't want to ask that question. That's ridiculous. Let's go with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel comfortable going.
Yeah.
I'm not going sides here, guys. I just feel,
Yeah. I wouldn't ask you that either. After the trial, Andy's found guilty. Do you think he will reveal everything, or perhaps quiz the public to guess what he did? I think there's going to be a lot of appeals. I don't think he'll ever admit to what he did. Do you think he'll ever come out forth with the truth if found guilty and appeals don't go through? Do you think he'll ever say what happened?
I don't know. I don't know enough. I just don't know. Who knows? If he did it,
right?
You never know.
If he did do it, and I know that the judge asked for, I guess, information on whether or not a plea deal was offered. Would you consider a plea if he were to give a BTK type situation where he explained everything that he did and why he did it?
Would I from where I sit, or
if you were the prosecution, let me put it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's really, that's got to be a decision that I think that should be up to the families, honestly. Like, that should be the families' opinions on that collectively, all four, should be a big part of anything having to do with that. I kind of feel like with a case this heinous, I feel like the state probably thinks we have to take this to trial.
It's true. And this will be the last question I have for you. Paul Terry comes on the $2 super chat, says, do you think other people are involved? I know that the defense has alluded to alternate perpetrators and multiple people. Do you think that this was something that could have been done by one person?
Yeah, I mean, well, without saying taking a position on him specifically, with people being asleep in bed and inebriated, yeah, I do think it could be. I think it takes a lot of, I've talked to experts who say it takes a lot of exertion to do something like that. But I do think that one person could do that. It's astounding to me that they could, but I do think it's possible.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I think that when you have people who are asleep and intoxicated and caught by surprise, regardless, some people look at Ethan and say, "Oh, Ethan was a really tall guy and a big guy." They find it hard to believe. Yeah, he's asleep, and the intruder, whoever he may be, was equipped with a very large knife. So it doesn't matter how big you are when those scenarios are in play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they had been out at the football game. They were all, really drunk, from what I understand. They were highly intoxicated. So I think you have to keep that in mind. It's just really one of the most horrific things I've ever covered.
I agree. It definitely is. Well, Miss Levy, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. It was a great pleasure talking to you guys. If you guys have not followed or subscribed to Angenette Levy's YouTube page. Here it is. It's also linked in the description. You guys can just hit the little hit the little button. It'll take you right to her. If not, just search up Angenette with the number 5, and you'll take you right to her channel. Let her know that Drunk Turkey Show sent you. And thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It was very kind of you to invite me, and please call me Angenette. It's been really fun talking to you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And if you ever need me to come on your channel, I'm more than happy to do so. It was a great time talking to you. It was a pleasure, and stay safe out there. I look forward to your next live. When do you plan on going live again?
I don't know. I was hoping to maybe tomorrow night, but I don't know if I'll be able to. I might have an interview coming together for something, so not sure. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned, everybody.
So we'll see.
All right. Well, guys, go check out Angenette's page and make sure you guys follow, like, subscribe, comment on this page. I'll see you guys probably tomorrow. Until next time, peace out, guys.